using a layer mask with a selection. A layer mask, what is it? A layer mask hides or reveals a selection within a layer. And so this is what the layer mask attaches to, is the layer. The mask term traditionally comes from the printing industry, where a mask was an oblique material or tape that was used to block off an area of an artwork that was not to be printed. So if you didn't want something to be printed, you would mask it off. Thus the word mask. Well, our developers put mask into Photoshop as a layer mask. The thing to note here with layer masks, and what's so very important, is that no actual pixels are harmed. So we talk about it as being non-destructive. Also, my layer mask is saved with my file. So if I close my file after creating a layer mask and then open it the next day, it will still be there. I can cover an entire layer, or I can just cover or hide or show specific areas within a layer with the layer mask. Like I mentioned, extremely flexible. Some people refer to it as kind of like a temporary eraser. So we can hide also the layer mask itself, and I'll show you this in a moment. We can only have one layer mask per layer, but we can have unlimited masks per image as long as there's one per layer. When we get a layer mask, we'll have a thumbnail that appears on the layer panel, and over here in my layer panel we'll see it appear. It actually will appear between the actual layer thumbnail itself and the layer name. And the layer mask by default is linked. So let's go ahead and create a layer mask. There are a number of ways that I can do this. Let's first start with a selection tool. I can use any of the selection tools that I have available. So I'm going to make sure the layer that I want to create the layer mask on is active. And I can use either a rectangle marquee tool, elliptical, any of these if I want to drag and mask a certain section of my image. Or I can utilize one of my other selection tools. I'm going to choose Command or Control D to deselect. And let's go ahead and maybe we want to use the quick selection tool. And I can click in the black here and do a little bit of dragging. And we could just take this part out if we wanted to. I know this is going to get a little tricky with the shadow down here, but let's just see what happens. So with this area that I'm selecting now, this is the area that I'm going to choose to hide. We need to get this little area in between there. Okay, so with this selection active, I can, number one, just click my layer mask button that's at the bottom of my layers panel. And this will actually reveal the selection. So there's a little bit of practice here on understanding which way it's going to go. So if I navigate to the bottom of my layers panel here, and I choose layer mask, add layer mask, you can see what just happened. So that area that was selected is now revealed. And you can see up in my layers panel that I indeed have a layer mask thumbnail here. So it's connected to my layer, and here's the link icon. Okay, so this is my layer thumbnail. This is my layer mask. I want to note while I'm here, do you see the little whitened corners? It's difficult to see, but this indicates that the mask is now the active element. If I click on my thumbnail, see how the white corners go around that. So that indicates that that is now active. So if I were to do some editing at this point, I'm going to be editing the pixels on the layer. If I click on my mask and have it active and I do some editing, it's going to be editing my mask. Okay, so I'm going to open up my history panel, and remember the history panel remembers the last several states depending on what you have set in preferences. Typically it's 20, which is what mine is set at, so I don't bog down my system too much. So I'm going to go back where I have just my selection. So now instead of clicking on the add layer mask button, I'm going to hold down a modifier key, my Alt or Option key. So holding down Alt or Option, depending if you're on a Mac or a PC, and clicking the Add Layer Mask does the opposite here. So this is without the Alt key. This is just clicking the Add Layer Mask. And if I undo here and hold down the Alt or Option key and click it, so you can see now this hides that selection area and it reveals the area that was not selected. I'm going to Control Z to back up here. I also can navigate up here to the top menu. Under the Layer menu, I do have an Add Layer Mask option that I can select. Layer Mask, and here's where I can choose to reveal all, hide all. That would be indicating the entire layer, if I want to hide everything or if I want to reveal everything. If I have a selection, I can reveal the selection or I can hide the selection. So reveal the selection was just like clicking the regular Add Layer Mask button at the bottom of the Layers panel. The hide selection was like clicking Alt or Option and that Add Layer Mask button. So we can reveal or hide our selected areas via this method as well. Another way that I can do a layer mask, and I'm going to do a Control D to deselect. Another thing I can do is click on my layer mask with nothing activated, and you'll see I get all white here. Now it's key to remember what you're seeing in black and what you're seeing in white. A layer mask thumbnail is only showing black, white. It can show grayscale as well. I'll show you that in a minute. So when I just click on it, I get a mask, but I haven't hidden anything. What I can do now on this mask, making sure that I have my mask active, I can then use any of my painting tools. So if I navigate over and choose a brush, and again, I can choose whatever type of brush I want. If I want to take a look at my brushes and add something interesting, I certainly can if I want to do an interesting effect here. So let's just do kind of an interesting thing, and you'll see what happens. Or I could choose, you know what, change my mind. Let's do a object actually and increase the spacing so you can see what's going to happen. Making sure that my brush, we can tuck this back away, making sure that my layer mask is indeed active. You want to make sure that this is the case, because if you don't have the mask selected and instead have the layer actually selected, you're going to start destroying the pixels. And this is all about not destroying pixels. So I'm going to go over here. My brush size's really small. Let's use the square bracket and increase it so we actually can see. And so I now am going to be painting with black. Okay, and I'm painting on my mask, remember. I'm painting with black because you can see my foreground color is black. When I paint with black, I am hiding the pixels, and I can just do clicks here if I want, however I want to do it. So in this case, I have not destroyed my actual picture. I've just created a mask that's hiding certain areas, and I'll show you that I didn't destroy it by turning this over and painting with white. So let's flip this around, and if I go with white, you can see that I'm going right over top of it. Now let's use an actual solid brush here, and we want to make sure that we're pure white. We'll tuck this back away. I'll increase my brush size again, and you'll notice that as I paint with white now, oops, and our flow is, let's get this all the way up to 100% here. So you can see I am actually painting with white, and if you watch my thumbnail here, my layer mask, you'll see it updates as I paint, so it's showing me what's going on. Okay, so black, remember to hide the pixels, white to reveal or permit those pixels to be seen. One thing I do want to mention again is the link icon. So this time I'm going to paint a little bit differently. I'm actually going to use a gradient to show you what happens when I paint with the gradient. Making sure I'm on my mask, and I'll just go from left to right. I can hold my shift key if I want this to go in a straight line. And look what happened here. So I have a transition from pixels, and it looks like my midpoint maybe wasn't set exactly in the middle, but you can see that I have a transition there. Let's do this again. Let's go like this. So you can see that now this is transparency, and this is, again, didn't destroy my original. Where there's black is where I am hiding those pixels. So we have the link icon. And the cool thing here is if I move my graphic, my mask will move with it. Look at what happened. So they are linked. They work together. If you move the layer, the mask moves as well. If I unlink this and then have my mask active, I can move my mask. Same way, if I have my layer actually active, I can move my layer. Okay, so there's some interesting things that we can do here. Now, if I want to get rid of this, I can right click and delete, or I can drag it to the trash or click the trash button and it's gone. So let's look at an application here. If I click on my ladybug layer, and again, if I do something where I use my quick selection, and let's just say I have something I want to composite here, and I don't want to necessarily destroy my pixels. Okay, we're getting all the white selected here. We're not going to be super concerned. There we go. So now if I want to hide those pixels, what do I do? Remember, if I alt click or option click the new layer mask icon, it will do that, or I can go under my layer menu as well. There it is. I might have a little bit of a halo around the outside edge, which I can easily fix. Remember, if I paint with black, so making sure I'm painting with black. Ooh, really large brush here. Let's decrease the brush size so I don't paint what I don't want to. And as far as the mask, I don't have to be super concerned with it having a sloppy edge because I'm just painting it here. All right, so now move. I want to move them together, so I'm going to keep the link. And if I go over top here, you can see what's going to happen. Okay, so that's a great application for a mask, hiding certain areas when you're compositing if you really don't want to quite delete them. We have ways to actually utilize what's called the properties panel for masks to do some alterations. We can create and refine the masked area using this properties panel. So I have a blank empty mask, but what I'm going to do is utilize my type tool here and type some text. I can turn off my initial layer so I can just see what's happening here. And we want to make it fairly large, so let's increase the size here. We're already at 200. This is a really large document. Let's make this 500. Click OK. So it's on my text layer right now, but if I hold down my command or my control key, I get it selected. So I'm going to turn this off, go to my mask, and with it selected, I can, move it around. If I use the selection tool, I can actually click inside and move this around. And now I have to fill it. So using quick keys again, if I do a command or control and delete, it fills it with my background color. If I do an alt or option delete, it fills it with my foreground color, which happens to be black, and this is where I can see it appear on my mask. So my mask is now hiding an area here, which I can do something interesting with this by bringing a graphic behind it so I can sort of see through my text if I want that sort of effect. I could also flip this around, and let me do something else. I'm gonna undo this, and let's go ahead and use my move tool, and look what I can do with this selected area. I'm going to actually increase. I'm just utilizing my selection right now, and I'm just stretching it because it's Arial and I can do that. So here it is. Now if I want what's inside of this to be seen, I'm looking at the picture behind it, what do I need to do? Let's go ahead and click OK. So if I fill this area with white, what's going to happen? White, remember, permits those pixels to be seen, which my mask is already white. That's why I'm seeing everything. Black will hide the pixels. Well, I don't want the inside of my fun, which is the active part right now, to be hidden, so I have to do a select and inverse. So now everything other than my text, my letters, are selected, and in this case I'm going to now fill this with black. And remember, that's the Option or Alt Delete. Okay, so now here I have it. I have the word fun, and again, if I unlink it, I can move these independently and do all kinds of fun things with it. Notice though what's happening here. This doesn't go on forever. So when I hit the edge of where my selection was, I now can again see what's underneath of it. So just be aware of that, knowing that it's dealing with black pixels and white pixels really. Okay, let's deselect here. And now let's look at our properties panel and things that I can do. Remember, at this point, I'm still non-destructively editing it. So in order to bring up my properties panel, I can go under the window menu and look for properties right here, or I can do a double click on my mask. And I get properties for my mask. So here it is, properties for the masks. Here's a layer mask. You can see it right here. And so in this properties panel, I can change the density, and let's just increase and decrease here to show you. It's a faded out. So how intense is that mask going to be? So I can really kind of do an interesting faded out effect if I want. I also can change the feather. Let's go full blast so you can see what happens with the feather. So if I did not choose to feather my selection prior, do you see how the edges are just becoming a bit blurred? So I can change the density, the mask density, and I can change the feathering for the mask right here in the properties panel.